Before we get into it, I do just want to mention that this one eye has been like constantly leaking today. So if you see my eyeshadow totally busted up, no you didn't, let's just ignore that. Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing really well. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my third update for my Pan Those Eyeshadows project pan for 2023. I am really excited to share with you the progress that I've made on all of my focus eyeshadows. I'm currently working on 4 eyeshadows in this project, 3 of which I did randomize from a spreadsheet that I have all of my eyeshadows without pan in, and then 1 I did choose to bring in on my own to kind of supplement and complement the color story. And really my ultimate goal with all of these eyeshadows is to hit pan on them, although I have also set myself a minimum number of uses as 15. And the reason why I've set myself a usage goal as 15 is simply because once you get to that point of using an eyeshadow, you are very familiar with the formula. At least for me, I better understand if it's an eyeshadow that I want to try to hit pan on, or if I want to roll it out and kind of give myself the space and the leniency to work on something else in my collection. But I feel like I really get a better understanding of that eyeshadow after 15 uses. I don't want to make this project impossible to hit pan on eyeshadows in, so that's why I gave myself that as an option to kind of be able to somewhat veto and move past eyeshadows. But I am rambling. This project was created by my friend Alexi. Of course, she'll be linked down in the description box. But I am so just excited to share with you the progress that I've made on all of the eyeshadows. So I have already swatched out the 4 that I have been working on over this past month or so. The first 2 are eyeshadows that I've had in for a couple months now, and then these bottom 2 are eyeshadows that I rolled in last update. For me, this color palette is very wearable. It's definitely something that I've been able to integrate into many looks over the last little while, and I do like that little pop of color with the purple, which I do have on as a little bit of a liner accent today. But overall, these have been really easy to reach for. It's been a really great way to reach for these palettes that these eyeshadows are contained in as well. And yeah, let's hop on into the progress that I have made on all 4 of these shades so far. So the swatch on the top here is a soft golden shade that comes from my Colourpop Yes Please palette, which I have since depotted since I brought it into my collection. So I have a small selection of those eyeshadows, even though they're very old. A lot of them still don't have pan on them, surprisingly, so I'm happy that I did end up rolling this into this project as my hand-selected shade. This is the one that I opted to bring in on my own. And so I already had a decent amount of progress on it. In my last update of this project, in fact, I had already reached for it 13 times. I've now reached for an additional 4 times since my last update, and I was able to hit a little pan right in the center. In my last update of this project, I had said that I was very close to hitting pan. In fact, I was a little bit surprised that I hadn't yet. And so only 4 more uses, I was able to make that happen. I primarily use this as like an inner half of my lid, kind of brightening sort of shade. I really feel like it brought a lot of life and light to my face. I'd use it as an inner corner highlight as well. And I did actually wear this as a face highlight a couple times just to kind of use it a little bit more and to use more volume of the product. But I didn't really reach for it that often because this was a little bit too deep on my skin tone at the moment and a little bit too shimmery, but it was fun to try it out that way. But yeah, I'm really happy I was able to hit that pan. And seeing as this shade will be rolling out of the project today, I will be pulling in my own hand-selected shade at the end of today's video. So please stay tuned for that to see what I end up adding into the color story with my own choice. But moving right along, let's talk about the next shade that is swatched right here, which is from Natasha Denona. This is the shade Mace, and it comes from my Metropolis palette. It is a really pretty kind of coppery, bronzy sort of neutral shade. It is more of a shimmer versus a metallic. This one does require a lot more building to get the impact that I desire, at least. When it's swatched out with the finger, it does look really smooth and uniform, but when you apply it with a brush, it's a lot more sheer. It can be a little bit more patchy. So it always requires a glitter glue and a lot of building, in my opinion, and from my own experience after having used it through this project at least. So in my last update, I had already used it 8 times, which I felt like was really great momentum. I've now used it an additional 7 times, bringing me up to 15 uses on the shade Mace. And here is what she is looking like after those 15 uses. There is a tiny little speck of pan in the middle. So this one right here is Mace, and I was able to hit pan on that actually just a couple days ago. I ended up using it as a liner, and that's how I was able to hit that pan. I used it on like the inner portion of my lid in a liner look, and it looked incredible. It really just brought a lot of light to my eyes, and I felt like that was just a really good way to play with neutrals. That pan honestly kind of surprised me because generally speaking with this palette, I have had to use eyeshadows significantly more than 15 times in this project to be able to hit pan. But because this was one that I needed to build, at least for the impact that I wanted, I ended up reaching into it a lot, dipping it into it a lot in order to get kind of the effect that I was after every time I reached for it. So of course, I'm really happy to have another eyeshadow pan in this palette, and I'm also so incredibly close to hitting pan on this more highlighting shade and this more kind of like terracotta matte creamy shade. And that's because I've been using these as like a little trio as of late. So ton of progress on all three of those shades. And I think I should be able to hit pan on this one pretty soon, actually, as a bonus pan potentially for my next update, because I've just been reaching for it so much. It is what I have on my inner corners today and up on my brow bone, and I freaking love it. I think it's such a beautiful, beautiful color. But nevertheless, another pan, and I am so excited to be rolling this out. As much as I love this palette, I am definitely looking forward to something new to roll into its place for this project pan. So these next two swatches are eyeshadows that I actually just randomized and rolled in my last update to this project pan. This one at the top, it looks really patchy in the swatch. I do apologize for that. That's actually a really poor representation of what this eyeshadow looks like because I had glitter glue on the back of my hand, and when I was swatching it, I realized I hadn't washed that off. So it looks really bad, but actually this is a very smooth, really blendable, creamy kind of matte formula. It is not choppy like it looks in the swatch, but in any case, it comes from my Colourpop and Hocus Pocus collaboration palette. This is the All Hallows Eve palette, and that shade is called Cometh to Us. As I said, I rolled it in my last update, and I've actually reached for it 12 times since I rolled it into this project, which is a massive amount of uses for me in a month. I generally use my eyeshadow somewhere around that like 8 to 10 uses. That's what I always kind of reiterate in these updates. But in any case, here's what it's looking like after 12 uses. I do have a tiny little pan actually in this eyeshadow, which is surprising that that's already happened, but I'm so happy to see that. I actually used this in the same liner look where I used the shade Maze, and I hit pan on both of these shadows in the same day. So I'll share that look with you on the screen. I freaking loved it. It was so intense and smoky and just like sharp, but also nice and neutral. And I wore that for a work day and I absolutely loved it. And that's how I was able to hit pan on this. Not only was I using this with more of a targeted brush, but more often than not, I was using this as a liner to be able to just create a little bit more emphasis on the eyes, but not have to use a really deep shade on my hooded eyes. I just like using this more so as a liner for an accent. And these pans are incredibly shallow as well. So it was pretty easy to hit pan on this in those 12 uses. Yeah, so we're 3 for 3 already. So let's hop on into the last shadow, which is that gorgeous shimmery purple shade. I was really excited to roll this shade into the project last update. This is the shade Amethyst from the What's Up Beauty Geodes palette, and this is just a really great way to add a little bit more color to my palette, which was very neutral, is much more wearable. I like having something that's a little bit more challenging to kind of have in the color story to pull me out of my comfort zone and to help me to create some more interesting looks. And so this month I ended up using this as my focus eyeshadow, which is something that I do on a monthly basis in this project pan. So if you're not familiar, definitely go and check out my 5-day challenge highlight on my Instagram so you can kind of see how I've been doing this over the last few months. But I did end up using this as my 5-day focus, and I had so much fun using the shade Amethyst and just reaching for the What's Up Beauty Geodes palette in general through that week. It's a palette that I really do like, but I had not shown enough love to. So it was so much fun. I've actually used this eyeshadow collectively 9 times. So the 5 days I focused on it, and then I've reached for an additional 4 times, which is fabulous. And today is the day. Today's the day. I ended up actually hitting pan on it in the smack dab middle of the pan right there today. Again, using it as a liner today to create a little bit of an accent on this otherwise very neutral look. I just decided kind of impulsively that I was gonna do that. It does require a lot of building because as you can see in the swatch, it's very sheer. Apologies if you can hear my neighbor's dog barking in the background. It doesn't look like my mic is picking it up, but I do want to apologize if you can hear it. I'm just going to try to keep going past that. But in any case, that means that I have hit pan on all 4 of my focus eyeshadows this month. It surprised me beyond belief. I'm so happy. That means that we're gonna be totally resetting this project pan, which is so fun. I had a lot of fun reaching for this eyeshadow, which was probably my least used shade in this palette. It was the one that I was the least drawn to out of every single eyeshadow in here. And I really pushed myself this month with playing with different purple looks. So I had a blast with it. I'm so happy this was the final shade in the color story, and I'm so happy to have hit pan on it as well. So yeah, that means that we're resetting the project. 4 new eyeshadows will be coming in, but in advance of that, I just want to talk about the one and only bonus pan that I did hit this past month, and it was one that I did predict in my last update would happen. It comes from my Catrice Basic Bae Palette. Yet again, it seems that this is the palette that we're talking about a lot this year, but I did hit pan in the shade MOTD, and I had let you know last update that I anticipated that was coming very soon. So there we are, a 5th pan this month, which feels so good. So I've removed all of my swatches because we're gonna be starting anew with a brand new color palette, which I'm so excited for. I have no idea what eyeshadows I'm gonna be working on for the next couple of months. I have my Tiny Decisions wheel here to pull the first 3 eyeshadows that we're gonna be focusing on, the randomized elements of this project. Every single eyeshadow in my collection that does not have a pan in it is in this spreadsheet. So let's pull that very first focus eyeshadow together. I am so excited, and I don't know why, I also feel a little bit nervous. But the first selection is from my Juvia's Place, the Magic Mini, and the shade that I've selected is called Yamoja. And Yamoja, I believe, is one of the gray eyeshadows in this palette, and yes, it is. It is this bright, kind of more blue silver shade. Here is what it looks like, and I've just swatched out what that shade looks like. It looks like it's more of a satin kind of cool silver, very icy. And as you can see, I don't have a ton of progress on it. In fact, there's not even really a dip. I have used this a handful of times, but it's not the type of shade that I'm generally drawn to. So I have a long ways to go with this one in order to hit pan, but I am excited to play around with it. And let's select my next focus eyeshadow together. So the next shade is going to be from my Catrice Basic Bae Palette, which is the one that I did have my bonus pan in, and the shade is called #TBT. And off the top of my head, I don't really remember which shade is TBT, but I think it's one of the metallics in here. I'm not sure, but let's see. Oh no, it is a matte kind of deep cool toned brown here. I think I've only ever swatched this. I don't think this is a shade that I have actually used on my eyes. It doesn't look like I've ever used a brush in it. So this is going to be a challenge. So there is a swatch of it. It's a lot more sheer than I was anticipating actually, which is good because that means that I can actually build it up a little bit to make more progress on it, but also it doesn't seem like it's going to be too smoky and a little bit too intimidating to use on my eyes. So yeah, that is a swatch of the shade TBT. I have a long road ahead of me to be able to hit pan on that because it is a bit of a deeper shade and it has absolutely no progress on it whatsoever. But yeah, that will be definitely a fun one to work on and to continue making progress on this palette as well. And lastly, for my randomized eyeshadows, we are gonna have one more that I pull in randomly. Comes from my Melt Cosmetics Gemini palette. The shade is called L'Oreal. I don't know. I'm definitely wrong in my pronunciation of that. But let me go grab that palette. So here is my Gemini palette. I actually do not remember which shade that is, but for some reason, I think it's on this more warm neutral shade end. But I could be entirely wrong. I could be entirely wrong. The shade Lorelei. I don't know why I can't pronounce that. Yeah, it is from that end of the palette. It is this one right here, which is kind of like a mac and cheese sort of orangey shade with a little bit of a more brown undertone. It's a really beautiful, warm shadow that I just absolutely adore, and I know I'm gonna get a ton of freaking use out of it because it's that perfect grungy, warm eyeshadow, but it definitely does not fit the rest of the color palette that we have here in front of me. It's definitely a little bit of a disconnected color palette so far, so I'm gonna have to spend some time with my collection to try to decide on what is going to be my fourth and final hand selected shade. So I'll be right back to share that with you. Okay, I actually did not spend too long trying to come up with my decision because there is an eyeshadow that I have been kind of wanting to prioritize. And so I just decided it's time to make it happen. I actually don't feel like it's gonna go that great with any of the shades that I've selected, but it should be interesting to try to challenge myself to make these work in tandem. So I want to work on a shade from my Nabla Soul Blooming palette. I already have a ton of pan in this palette, a ton of progress on this palette, and I just want to keep that momentum going and keep hitting pans on the shadows in this eyeshadow palette. So I want to work on the shade Climbing Rose because I feel like that is a wonderful shade to be working on in this time of year. Now that we're in the springtime, now that the days are longer and brighter, I just think this would be a perfect shade for me to use on pretty much an everyday basis if possible. It could actually pair really well with that kind of cool silver shade. It could pair really well with the warm orange shade to try to do something a little bit more grungy using a pink. I don't know, but I shall play around with it and give it a try. So Climbing Rose is this gorgeous metallic pink shade, which pinks are not usually my vibe, but I do think this is going to be a really beautiful color that I think is just gonna go so well with so many different types of looks, and it's just something that I'm feeling myself kind of drawn to, so I want to lean into that a little bit more. I have definitely used Climbing Rose a lot over the last few years that this has been a part of my collection, but this is a very dense and highly pigmented eyeshadow. I do feel like it's losing a little bit of its pigmentation now that it's getting a little bit older, but it still is really rich, as you can see in that swatch there, and I don't love an overly bright pink look, so I probably won't be trying to really build this one up. But I am really excited to reach into this palette and just see a little bit more love on this palette because, as you know, this is one of my favorites in my eyeshadow collection. So looking not only at this color story, but actually at the progress of each of the individual eyeshadows, I don't believe that I will have any new pans in the next month, but I do think I'll have a lot of fun integrating these eyeshadows into looks. Please let me know the kinds of looks that you think I should create or ways that you would wear these eyeshadows either together or using them as a focus in any number of looks. Please let me know which one of these shades you would like to see as a focus eyeshadow as well over on my Instagram for my 5-day challenge. More likely than not, it will probably be either the kind of warm orange here or it will be Climbing Rose, just to have something fun to experiment with and try to make a variety of different looks using, because when it comes to integrating a warm brown into looks, that tends to be something that's very easy for me to do, and it's not that interesting to keep tabs on from the day to day. And I have already used a silver as my focus eyeshadow already once this year, so I think it will be one of these two, but please let me know which one you would prefer to see in that kind of context. But that, my friends, is absolutely everything. I'm so excited to see what this next month has in store for this project pan. But yeah, thank you so much for watching and for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.